Awesome. And we're live on YouTube. Thank you everyone for joining another NPM Open RFC call. Today's date is Wednesday, April 27th, 2022. We'll be following along in the agenda that was posted in issue 578 on the NPM RFC's repo. I've shared the meeting notes doc in the chat, so feel free to add yourselves to attendees. As usual, this call and all comms associated with the NPM RFCs and org are covered under code of conduct. We ask folks to please be kind as each other are speaking. Please raise your hand if you have a comment and we'll call on you. And also wanted to quickly shout out and give a couple announcements. NPM v9, we're going to start to potentially cut release candidates in the coming weeks and months. And so there's a few breaking changes that we've got queued up there, mostly config related, that we want to put on folks' radars. So we've got a tracking issue there for folks to check out. That which I've linked in the meeting notes docs. Also want to mention the OpenJS World conference is coming up quick. That'll be happening in June. I know myself and Roy from our team are definitely going, and we're trying to schedule and coordinate getting more folks from our team also to go. And that's on me to try to schedule. So high on my priority list is to get as many folks from our team there and hopefully be able to meet up in person with folks, as it's been a few years without seeing friendly faces. So it would be nice to get together there. Also, what has happened in previous years, NPM has been able to participate in the Collab Summit, which usually happens just after the conference, and we've been able to run a session where we collaborate and contribute, or collaborate with contributors, be able to sort of surface new ideas for the CLI, and it's always been a nice working group, essentially, in-person working group. So hopefully we'll be able to do that again and have it on our radars to ideally contribute to the Collab Summit. I know a bunch of folks on our team contribute to different working groups as well, to the Node project specifically. So yeah, did any other folks have announcements they want to share? If not, we can just jump right into the agenda. And Luke, I saw you just joined, so copy and paste the meeting notes again. The first item that we had was number RFC number 572. Tierney, I think this is your issue, essentially bringing up the idea of removing the access public or the access flag with the value public for initially published scoped modules.
Yeah, this feels like an artifact that does not match how the NPM CLI kind of works now. And particularly, this is especially annoying when publishing scoped packages from workspaces, which generally I think is probably how people are going to end up using workspaces. And so like people probably weren't publishing scope packages as much, or at least the barrier is a bit higher. And I think with workspaces, that barrier will become lower. And workspaces and the intersection of like that kind of being general advice that people are giving for how to publish securely. So I think, this makes sense as an approach to just drop this because it's not really necessary. Or at least I don't particularly think it's necessary. Yeah. And it's also not, it is mutable, which is nice. So if someone does accidentally publish something public, they can make it private. Yeah. I think this should be the default.
I don't know who was first, Gar or Jordan. Which one of you want to go first?
You can go ahead.
Sure.
You're both too nice.
A couple Canadians on this call, I guess.
I don't see any rationale for scoped modules being treated differently than unscoped modules here. Yeah. So it makes sense to make them match. That said, it is a huge mistake that NPM init for example, has always defaulted to a package JSON that's publishable. It should start with private true. And similarly, because of that mistake, npm publish on an unscoped package also can accidentally publish something you don't want published. So I would rather see like a slightly more holistic thought to have to figure out how to make these all the same and avoid the foot guns and be convenient. I don't have any personal objection to what Tierney's suggesting here, but it might be better to first make npm init default to private true, and then make all npm publishes default to publish, including for scoped, because then we've made sure that that everything's the same and there's no weird boundary between scoped and unscoped. But also the default is the safe thing, which is if you're not thinking about it, you'll make an unpublishable package. And then once you've removed private true, which you're always going to do if you're intentionally making a publishable package, then you get the easy behavior Tierney's looking for scope packages, which is also what I want. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, just to quickly respond to that, I think that's fine. I think I generally agree with. I don't have an issue with that. I don't know if I agree with it. I don't have an issue with it. I'm kind of unopinionated on that. I do appreciate how low a barrier it is and how few steps it is to publish something. I think that's a strength of the ecosystem for new people especially. But I can also see how that can be problematic if I actually don't have a registry configured and create something new internally, and then oops, I published my internal package publicly. I think that this change could land without, or and then have that change as a fast follow if you wanted to work on that, Jordan.
Sorry, the private thing. Yeah, I can write RFC for that. Sure.
Gard, did you want to chime in, and then Phil?
Well, just to give a little of why this fence post is in the road explanation. When scope packages were introduced, this was before GitHub. This was NPM trying to solve private packages, and we couldn't make unscoped packages private, but scope packages can be. And so the idea was scope packages are where you go to make packages private. I don't think that's the case anymore. I'm in agreement with this, but I do think it's important to understand why it was there so that when we are removing it, we understand what changed. And what changes, if you want to make private packages, you use the GitHub registry now, because its access control is leaps and bounds beyond what the NPM registry can do. So yeah, I think it's because of GitHub registry, the idea that your scope packages are where you go for private packages has gone. And I do agree with this decision.
I would definitely, that totally makes sense. And I perhaps outside of a meeting wouldn't frame it as GitHub registry, because there's a ton of registry projects like this and they're all relatively advanced. Or at least I personally wouldn't do that. But I think that I think private registries are the correct avenue and I mean that also made sense my guess, and this is a completely uninformed guess, I've never talked to anyone about this, I have no clue, was that this was part of an upsell, and that totally makes sense and that's valid, and I think it is an artifact that does not need to exist anymore of how kind of NPM historically approached private packages. So
go ahead, Phil.
Kind of a side thought. I think this change makes sense. Something we've been thinking of on improving security around NPM is adding support for some kind of build or author signatures and pushing these to some transparency ledger. For example, the SigStore ledger, which is off a third-party database. So if you accidentally push a package public that should be private, you might end up, if we go with something like this, with this metadata about your package in an immutable ledger that can't be changed. But I think I like that idea of making packages private by default in the npm init. Might solve that problem.
Yeah, so there
I
is
saw Jordan's
policy.
issue just pop up.
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah, just filed it. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Darcy.
I was just going to say there is an unpublished policy, at least for the registry today, which gives certain parameters for you to quickly unpublish a package potentially that has. It's extremely limited in its scope in terms of the conditions which you apply to unpublish, but there is the ability to essentially quickly back out if there is some I would imagine when people are publishing initially without with this turned off, then it would be, if a mistake is made, you can quickly pull back from that. So I'm wondering, Philip, also, and this is probably a side discussion, but like hopefully that means an unpublished action also would remove any kind of information from whatever their like secondary third party ledgers are going to hold certain information, I guess. Yeah. Okay. Any follow-ups, Tierney? It seems like there is just a make everybody aware, like there's an opportunity for us to quickly change this in V9 essentially.
I would like, yeah, I was gonna ask, can this be dropped in V9 just to get it kind of out the door as a, because I do think that is a major change. I think that people have scripts that include this, so I would prefer to get it out for V9.
And the other thing
that's also telling you to do work.
Sorry, the other thing I just commented on my newly filed one is we could make it whether the initial package JSON should be private or public. We could make that be a prompt question, which then means it's also settable by npm config. Yes. And so given that, we could actually add that in npm 8, defaulting to public, and change the default in npm 9. And that way, folks who didn't want, folks would be able to set the npm config value and have it work in npm 8, and they would protect themselves from the default change going to v9 in either direction.
Right. Okay.
I agree that should be a prompt question, regardless of whether or not it's true or false.
Yeah, and we could do the same for whether scoped packages default to being public initially. That could be an npm config value as well with the default changed. In general, I love that technique of shipping all new functionality in a minor and then have the breaking change just be flipping the default, because then people can insulate themselves from the breaking change pretty trivially.
I'm vigorously nodding. Sorry.
Quickly, I was trying to see if we had a config already for this. I was just trying to quickly go through the init config. And we don't. So
I assume there probably isn't, because you can init with a scope and then that defaults to private, and so that was probably the kind of stopgap fill for that.
Okay. So in general, the consensus, hopefully, or general consensus here is folks are nodding their heads to adding the ability for npm init to default to private true in v9, dropping the access, the need for essentially access public for npm publish in v9 as well. And I think that solves your problem, Tierney.
I think so, yes. I think the access public absolutely solves it, and then the other thing is a nice off pour of this that I didn't expect, but I'm very happy with.
Any other comments, feedbacks before we move on?
Just to Gar's point, also just remove. Honestly, I don't know if that command isn't even needed anymore, that flag, but remove the necessity for the flag too.
For access?
Which I guess the flag mirrors what's in the package JSON. I'm not sure about.
I think you still need
the flag absolutely is a good addition. Those two things being things we put out there during init, I think, are security wins. So in my package JSON, I've turned that on or off. I don't have to worry about command line flags or anything. Very explicit, always explicit.
Just so I'm aware, though, or I'm following here, access would still exist for publish.
can you access public a private or private equals true module or private colon true module? Can you publish something that's marked as private in your package JSON?
I've always thought access is different from private true, and that private true just publish will bail out immediately. When you don't have private true, then npm publish works, and then only if the package is scoped, access kicks in, and when you specify it explicitly, it changes whether it's private or public. And I think you can make a private package public and vice versa.
Yes,
as you publish it.
Yeah,
and that's where the access flag comes in.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, then that access needs to stay, because also that's an npm registry feature, I think, that you can like still pay for. So yeah, that makes sense. So access doesn't totally go away.
So Roy, you just asked to enumerate the changes or that we'd like to make. So it sounds like one, we're going to make init default to private true in npm v9. We're going to remove and then I think that's it. Make also the config init config to be so init. I guess what would the name be? Init access, and that can be true. Or that can be. What would it be?
Well, so access is. I mean, I don't think access is like. I think you just dropped the requirement. You drop the requirement for access public on a publish of a scoped module for the first time, because this only happens when it's the first publish of a scope module. It's not subsequent publishes, it's just the first one. So you literally just get to delete that code. And then the rest of it is like you can change that. You can opt into using that again if you want. That actually won't break anyone that actually might not be a breaking change to drop this, because if you're access publish or public, it'll still work. But you just drop that code. And then the private is separate, because private is different than access, as we just talked about, because access is for the scope packages only. Yeah, so it would just be like is private or something, or no, just the private field in it, right? Like that's it. Just
so init.private, and it's going to be true or false.
Yep,
it's the default config. No,
so we just
dot dash. Don't even bother. Dots are all deprecated. Don't even add the dots to them.
Okay. I was looking at the docs, and apparently they are lying to me right now.
Yeah, so the access public requirement on a scope package just gets deleted. That's what my thing is, and then Jordan's RFC is the init changes.
I think that's doable.
I just wrote down bullets in the chat, if that helps, Roy. So we don't remove access control. That flag state, so the requirement on initial publish stays, but the feature stays available because it's still a feature of the registry. I hope that's clear.
Yeah, we'll have to. I'll have to look at the actual code that implements this, because my guess is that we're doing something, explicit. Okay. Because I'm not sure if this is the registry that's enforcing this or we're enforcing this. So like, we'll have to go to like registry team if we want to change.
Or you can just pass in the flag by default, right? And
right. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Make.
Which then still doesn't change the DX, and actually might allow that to be a minor, because if you pass access public, it'll still get passed, and if you don't, it like yeah.
Cool. Are we good? Moving on. Roy, you got all the notes done? Appreciate you taking notes again. I've also added a couple items to the actual tracking ticket there for V9. Moving on to 571, the RFC again, Tierney making the updates useful, npm update useful for modern package management?
Yeah. I just consistently have for years have been disappointed by npm update and always have to like remember the dance between outdated and update and how, and then I just give up and delete my node modules and then reinstall and it's all fine. So that has been well, no, that's not true, because sometimes there's a version that like it doesn't install, won't bump the versions, and so I have to like do weird stuff and it's annoying. Yeah. I just want npm update to allow me to kind of go through and actually have a meaningful update path for all of my packages, so I can run that in action daily and tell me, okay, cool, here's the changes you need, and have that automatically create a PR, or not do that and I'm good, and then I can turn off Dependabot. Or, well, I don't have to turn off Dependabot, but I can do work before Dependabot gets to it, so Dependabot doesn't have to do work.
That makes sense. Gar,
yeah.
Did you want to give feedback?
So update stays within the semver ranges of anything in your tree, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you know, it's contract. What you're looking for is similar to, there's another project that I helped them with batch requests to the registry, something that will bump your dependencies, right? Yeah, npm check updates.
Yes.
You want something that's an update that works on your package JSON that will look for latest.
Yes. Yeah, I basically want to, all of the stuff that Dependabot vomits into my project in PRs, I want to be able to do that from the CLI. And I want to be able to manage that from, like, I want to be able to do those updates and have that be incremental as part of my process, and not have to rely on a automated PR workflow, or, you know, external tooling. I want that to be able to be in the package manager. And I think that's, you know, I think the ecosystem has seen a need for that pretty strongly. And the explosion of those kinds of tools is a result of the lack of that being built in.
So basically you're looking like a hybrid between install and update, because updates contract that will not change your package JSON. Installs contract is that it will, but it's, you have to tell it the version. So you're looking for an install update.
I'm not sure about how, because I don't think install will still respect the semver ranges. Like if there's a major of Lodash, right? Install is not going to tell me that.
If you install Lodash at latest, it'll install Lodash at latest.
Right. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So I want to be able. Yeah. I'm talking about normal npm install. Yeah. So you're talking about updating to the latest version. I basically want npm update or whatever command. I don't care what the command is. I just want a command to tell me, hey, here's your packages and we've updated them. Like I want to be able to do that at once. Outdated kind of does this. I think it's to some extent it does. It will tell you like what the latest is and what the current one is you have, and if that's a difference or not. And I think if it follows your semver range, so like if you'll get updated when you run npm update. I don't want to have to like run npm outdated and then npm install at the version, and like maybe I might be screwing that up somehow and I don't know how and I don't care. So like that's the I want to avoid having to like have that institutional knowledge of like, here's how this stuff works, and I just want npm to kind of resolve it for me.
It feels like flag on update that would say update even my own dependencies,
or
like,
I mean, -i, npm update -i, and make it interactive, and then let people pick what they want. Right, like everyone, like one of the few things that people still really like about Yarn that npm can't do is upgrade interactive. And like I think that the those of us that could reliably construct a command line command that does what we want are of extreme minority. Most people actually need to see something like the npm outdated output. And as Tierney's saying, then they would have to manually translate that to a command, and an interactive update would give them the ability to do that without having to make those translations in their head.
Again, we would have to include the ability to also go beyond the current like update functionality to update outside of the range, right? So that's the other key, right? So that independently of an interactive mode probably would have to be added to update, right? Which is why I know we floated a couple in chat here, float a couple other names for a command, just because it, potentially there's no subcommands that we're going to be able to add to update the way that it's designed right now.
Right. But I think with interactive, users will have a better chance of being capable of deciding whether they want an in-range or an out-of-range update.
I think
there's especially go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, especially if they're just typing npm update-i with no arguments, that's a little different because that's just their dep tree. You're kind of just showing them their direct deps and that being like, here's all the in-range updates. Do you also want to do, here's the ones that have out-of-range updates. Do you want to do those too? But if I type npm, if I get a security warning on my company's CI that says, ANSI styles has a CVE, and I'm like, okay, npm update-i ANSI styles. I want to be able to be shown if you update these, you don't have to change anything. We'll just update your log file. Or I want to be shown if you update these direct dependencies to in-range, the latest in-range, then that will achieve the transitive update you want to do. Or the only way to achieve the transitive update you want to do is by updating these things, these major versions. It's just an opportunity to display a lot more of this information and sort of empower users to make these informed choices, because I think that users are far more likely to understand. I think they're far less likely to understand, to have their entire dep graph in their head and understand how Semver works, versus if you show them kind of step-by-step stuff.
Philip, I see your hand's been up for a while. Did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I worked on Dependabot for almost 3 years, so I can talk about this for hours. If anyone actually wants to,
I would love to.
I can talk about this async. But yeah, in Dependabot, I'd love to have a feature like this because we could delete a bunch of code for one. But we ended up with a feature where you can set kind of a versioning strategy, which is kind of what we're talking about here. So it controls what Dependabot does in your package JSON. So you can tell Dependabot, go and update every version Semver range to the latest available, and it will keep the same Semver syntax, for example. And that will then also update the log file. Or you can prevent it from changing the package JSON, which essentially is just a log file update. And there's a bunch of strategies we ended up with, which are you can also tell it to widen the range. So it won't necessarily bump the major version, but it will make it more wide, which is usually what you want for libraries. So that there's probably a bunch of things to consider there. For apps versus libraries, usually have a very different versioning strategy.
Yeah, that sounds basically like what I'm recommending, and that is also I document that in this RFC. My goal is so that tools like Dependabot can just delete code. That is the goal. I think this tooling should fundamentally allow other tools to build on top of it, because I think that automation stuff is very important, and I think the underlying tooling needs to be able to support that. And to just address, my headset's dying. To address Jordan's point, I think the interactive stuff, I really agree that should be a thing, and I from what I've talked with other people, I think everyone generally agrees that should be a thing. I think that the figuring out what the DX of the initial commands is, or what that DX is and how that lands and what that API is like, and then the next step, the kind of follow up to that being cool. Now that we have this done, let's get into interactive. I think is probably the best path forward. in just terms of figuring out what we're actually doing, and then going down the interactive path as well. Because I don't think outside of init, there's not a ton of interactivity. And I think I've seen, mentions here and there of potentially changing interactivity DX. And so letting that mature if possible would be ideal. So we don't have to redo it twice.
Yeah, maybe I can just make a note on the interactivity, because it's definitely something I've been pushing against, because we have so much stuff to figure out yet. But when we do push for it, I really wanna like a holistic push, to have an experience similar to like the GitHub CLI, which I think is like beautifully put together. Like interactive is really consistent across all the different commands, and like everywhere that can benefit from interactivity, like then it can be added. But Tierney, I think it just reinforces what you just said. Like, let's start with focusing on like just improving the base update functionality, and then once the day we get to talk about interactivity, let's try to have a holistic way of think about it. Let's think about all the other commands that can benefit from it.
Yeah, I feel like we did have an RFC for a -- interactive flag at one point, or we had that discussion maybe a year or 2 years ago. And similar, thought was had, like, let's maybe hold off on this until we can do it across multiple commands, at least to try to figure out what that looks like. I do wonder if we can just, get better docs even to help folks, like with a how-to, updating dependencies, and just saying the flow that most people go through, which is like check npm outdated first, and then see which dependency you want to update potentially. It's not great, but I think at least we could potentially also at the same time indeed add something like a range flag or an out of range, some flag to npm update to allow it to capture like the essentially latest updates, right? Like, which is what a lot of people have been asking for us for a long time.
I don't really understand how the range would apply to that, because like you're running npm update across your entire package JSON, and so the ranges are going to be different for every package.
Right. So you would want to do like available, like out of range, like essentially star would be latest.
Oh, I thought
right?
you meant, I thought the star was literally like put whatever I had written above here. Okay, that makes way more sense.
No,
Thank
right.
you. That makes way more sense.
Yeah. No, star means latest, right? Like,
yeah. That, I thought that was like a placeholder. I didn't realize that was actually the syntax you're posing. Yeah, that totally, I'm very on board with that actually, because that allows you to have that same control I was describing. Yeah.
Exactly. And it might even map to maybe, and Philip would know this, might map to kind of what Dependabot had done with ranges, right? And like, or, like now you can specify specific ranges that you know of, especially when you're using, let's say, that range flag with a specific package that you're updating. So you're saying like which ranges out of the current specified in the package JSON that you're willing to go up until. So let's say you don't know what the specific version is that you want, but you're willing to go up to like a known good version essentially. And you can use that range potentially to update up until that range, right? And so like, that's why I said star, which would essentially give you latest as the highest range that you could update to, or highest version you could update to. Go ahead, Gar.
That brings up a good point, though, of the differences between install and update. Update currently doesn't change your package JSON, so we don't need to worry about what it writes to your package JSON. If we're installing a new version, what are we writing to your package JSON? If it's, let's say you've got a pinned version and you tell it to update everything in your package JSON up through the minors, what's the version that's saved now?
So npm update saved now exists, right?
But update won't do anything if you've got a pinned version. If you say your version 100, update won't install 1.1. But if with this new thing, you tell update, hey, update everything in my package JSON up to, in the minors. So 1.1 will get installed. Should it then do a caret? Should it pin the new version it used?
It will do essentially the same as an install, like use a caret value. That's my
The
expectation.
save prefix.
The save prefix would be used, yeah.
I would expect that it would default to, if you don't have a verb, it does not continue. It does not have a verb. It persists whatever your choice was that was already defined, and which in most cases is going to be the same thing. Like it's going to be rare that people don't.
Well, you could pass save prefix though, and then also like that would prevent. Yeah. Sorry.
I would expect the save prefix to only kick in when there's not an existing entry in package JSON. Like the save prefix is when like I'm installing something new. But if it's already in package JSON, then whatever's in there is the prefix that should be used. And obviously I can override that by passing a range. But like, yeah, I mean, if the save prefix is caret and I've put a tilde in package JSON, don't use caret unless I've told you to explicitly, because like I've explicitly put in package JSON that it doesn't follow semver and I can't trust a minor upgrade.
I mean, an obvious problem or example of that, or I think I agree with Jordan.
TypeScript, React. I mean, but neither of these, like both of them, you're supposed to use tilde and not caret, because both of them make breaking changes and minor updates depending on your view of what's breaking. And like that's fine as long as you know to do that, and as long as NPM respects it.
The other example is if I do npm update -- range equals asterisk, and does that then change everything to asterisk? Because I think that's what you're suggesting.
No, that would not be my understanding of that. Yeah.
Okay.
But,
again,
this was
good.
floated here in chat, right? This
Yes.
is not part of like this initial. Yeah. So, and I apologize, Philip. You've had your hand up for a while. If you want to jump in as well.
I guess like the way I think about it, there's basically two things that are going on here. There's either one is the strategy of how to update the range, potentially a range in the package JSON. Like, should it be the latest version and use the existing range that was there, like a tilde or a caret? Or should it, for example, include the current version and the latest version? So you should be relaxed. And then there's a separate question of what type of update are you doing, or what versions are you ignoring? Like either only do a minor update or ignore major updates. So there's maybe two different things that you can pass to this update command.
That's why I think in Dependabot, you said you implemented different strategies. Is that accurate to sort of what you were saying before? Like you had different strategies for like what you would opt into?
Yeah, the strategy is just for what to do with the version in the package JSON after it's updated. So it's got loads of logic that we can delete. That would be awesome. We like try and like keep the same syntax and then just replace the version depending on the strategy you're using. And for apps, we do it differently to versions, to libraries.
Yeah, Toonie, like I would love to flesh out more like of this idea, like in this RFC, like if we can capture some of like the notes, flesh out some of the ideas that we've got here, like as an incremental step, can we introduce a new flag, which just gets you that immediate need that I think a lot of people have, which is like, how can I update my dependencies, potentially not change, like you said, not change the verb? Then what does that look like? Is there some options we have that you can propose for how you imagine we could implement it? I think we're all on board. Like I'm on board to like do something here. And then the longer tail of this is, okay, interactive mode eventually pulls in kind of like the npm outdated view, allows you to select and then apply essentially that selection against like this these other types of flags and capabilities, right? So cool.
Yep.
Cool. I just want to quickly move on. We only got about 15 minutes left, and I did quickly, at least in the ordering here at the top, I did pull up. I know Phillips RFC, but let's quickly get to 570 first. This is Jordan, your workspace tag version prefix. Do you want to speak to this a bit?
Yeah, sure. Let me pull it up. So I think I filed this because I saw a comment somewhere. There we go. Yeah, so Gar commented that we don't have a solution for git tagging of workspace version bumps. And so I wrote up this RFC to make that easy. Essentially, whenever I'm using a multi-repo, like multi-package repository, whatever term you want to use for it, I pick my own convention for version updates to a single subpackage, which is that I put brackets and then I put the name of the subpackage and then I do a space and then I do whatever I'd normally do, which is v1.2.3 or whatever. There's nothing about that convention that's necessarily special, but it's just what I'd happen to do. And so the suggestion is we add this new config that defaults to something. And I suggested my convention just because I haven't seen anything different. And that way we can enable NPM version behavior inside workspaces, and people have the ability to override it to do whatever prefix they want. And there's already a tag version prefix. Like I've set up in all of mine, I have it add the letter V to the tag and to the commit message. I think the tag is defaulting adding the V and the commit message doesn't. And I have a config that adds it to the commit message. So the precedent is there for adding a prefix via config. So I sort of put all that together to make this. Yeah.
Go ahead, Gar.
Yeah, we actually looked into this a lot recently, getting release please set up in the CLI for the workspaces. And they kind of are all breaking changes all over the place on what they tagged it at. But it seems to me across the ecosystem that normalizing the package name, removing special characters is important to some people. So we might want to make the default a snake-cased scope package name. So no @ scope - package name. If the package has that asterisk or hyphens in it, that's fine. That would have been my suggestion, or that will be my suggestion, based on what I've seen other things doing when they tag releases for workspaces. Now, how to templatize that, I have no idea.
You mean like how to pass parameters or like to that, or how to, what do you mean?
Well,
templatize.
I mean, package, well, in his example here, he
uses a variable like yeah.
What would that be? Like escaped name or like snake name? I don't know. That doesn't make a lot of sense of how to make that a template. But I do think it's important that you be able to have a normalized version of your package name in that tag, because I've seen a lot of them out there strip out special characters. I don't know why. I don't know why that fence is in the road, but I feel like it's important to keep that capability, which would mean we need to support it if we templatize it.
Right. And it's another thing that we're like logging, and we want to be concerned about any sensitive, I guess, package or workspace names potentially. I don't know. Okay. I mean, I'm all up for this, by the way. Like, I think this is great. But yeah, how do we do that variable? What does that look like? I think is interesting. I don't know. Is there?
And I'm in no way.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say I'm not rigidly attached to any particular solution. This seemed like a solution to somebody else's problem, and so I filed this. But yeah.
Wondering
the prior art. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is there any prior art? No.
I mean, we could look at what Lerna does. That's probably had the most time to develop prior art.
And you can look at what release please does, and I believe actually you can go to the CLI now because we're using that. Let's see what those tags are. Right, they are just tagging with the base name, not the scope - name anymore. They used to tag with the scope dash base name, which would be what I would recommend the default is.
Okay. I mean, do you want to turn this from RFC to actual RFC, or do we want to just go straight to like making a pure app and to support this? I'm not sure if this is something you want to actually work on, Jordan, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to do tons of work on it. I was more just seemed like a straightforward solution to somebody else's problem, and I thought I would do them a favor and file it, and potentially do myself a favor a year from now.
You're also doing me a favor because I run into this daily.
Yeah, it just seemed like the sort of thing that needs to be solved, and this seemed like a way to do it. I don't want to commit myself to pushing it too hard, but if there's small things I can do that help move it along, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah. Is there always a scope, Gar, in your examples here? Right. So that's the other thing to note. Right. So then it gets kind of interesting. Templates are right. Conditional templates are also even more troublesome, I would say.
I mean,
so yeah, maybe go ahead, Tierney.
No, this does what I was gonna say. So I think this is the correct proposal. Like, this is implementing what I would do, exactly what I would do, and what I think we should do. Although I do actually, I mildly disagree about version the multiple commits. I actually think it should be, I think it should be multiple commits, not one commit.
I mean,
that's
I would also expect that
individual version will be a commit.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if it already makes separate commits for each sub package, then of course that's what it would continue to do. That's what I would do myself anyway. But I also would never be running a version command on more than one package at once. So, so I don't care either which one it does. Either way.
So Jordan,
but just one thing to add. I know that there are people who do, against my personal preference, they like publish multiple they bump multiple packages at once, and so they would probably want to version them all at once, and they might not want like 15 commits when they're publishing 15 packages every time one package has a change. I don't have a lot of empathy for that problem, but I think they will complain.
So you can actually stop that from happening today with npm version. There's a flag for not doing a git commit.
And that's what it does under the hood currently. It just says, don't make your commit. So they can keep that turned on if they want.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I +1 Roy's comment here in the thread itself for the format, like the workspace name and then the workspace version. I think that's a good way forward. So we can probably queue that up, Roy.
And the question from Gar in the chat is also a good one. Should we split the scope from the package name?
No. I would say no, because it gets too complicated at that point. Then you're checking if it does or doesn't have scope, and there's like a conditional there. Then we have to introduce new, So package name is everything. If you want to parse that out yourself and do something like with your Git history, then feel free to. Cool. Okay, we can backlog this. Just want to give some time here with about 8 minutes left. I pulled up Philip, your RFC for the improving package signature verification. I know we've been doing some work behind the scenes to make this happen, but I also want to just hear from you if there was any updates on this RFC, if you saw or you knew of anybody that had any like pushback. Otherwise, I think we probably can potentially land the RFC as it is, or potentially, I know there was one comment about potentially nesting the signature verification under npm audit. I'm not sure if that has changed the RFC at all from the last time I checked it.
I did update the RFC to match the audit command, but I'm not sure I could go either way on that. I'm not really wedded to having it separate or nested.
Yeah, I mean, given we have audit, the current audit does vulnerabilities, and we want to add audit licenses. It seems like audit signatures also makes a ton of sense and gives us future expandability for tons of other auditing things.
Cool. Yeah. I haven't had any pushback. There's no further comments in the RFC. I've done some implementation to test the performance of it. Just getting the documents is definitely the slowest part right now. Doing the crypto to start and verify signature is super quick. So I think folding some of this into install could be
but if node modules is already reified on disk, isn't that information already just there?
Yeah, I think if it's not,
like, it shouldn't have to make any network calls if I've already npm installed.
So you can potentially use Arborist then to get that information.
Yeah, I need to look into that. I think I might have just an implementation issue. It's never hitting the cache for some reason. But
and those signatures are not stored in the lock file?
No.
Okay, that's fine.
That's in the package.
And then the only other question I had is, I know for now it's just being added as a separate command, but is there, short of manually adding like a post install script or something, is there a config I could use to, like, it currently runs npm audit after my installs, and there is a config I can turn that off, but is there a config I can use to control whether it runs npm audit signatures at the end of installs? Because then I could turn it on for all of my other coworkers on a repo without them having to know about it, and also without monkeying the scripts.
Yeah, haven't thought about adding it, but I was thinking we could do a follow-up to just enable it by default on install if we're happy with the behavior. Performance seems to be,
yeah,
checking
on that performance.
Yeah, I checked like 400 packages, takes under half a second to actually do the crypto on it. So that part is super fast.
Yeah, I guess one thing to note, and I know we don't have a lot of time to dig into this, but this is just coming to me now, given that you're starting to play with the implementation. The fact that there may be new signatures, I know that we're considering what happens the next time we want to rotate, a key, you want to introduce, you want to re-sign a package. It almost seems like it's impossible to cache or store the signature locally then, because you, at any time, the key or the signature could have been updated, or a new signature could have been added to the document. Is that not accurate?
Yeah, I mean, in a case of disaster, we might need to re-sign packages, but ideally we don't need to do that. And if we rotate a key, we only start double signing a new package releases. So once you download them, I think the signatures should stay as they are. The thing that might change is the public keys that are available. Like the old one might expire and we've added a new one. So I think that endpoint needs to be
checked,
can't cache that
each time
for too long.
Okay.
I think we can cache it for some time and then double sign when we rotate keys. That's the current plan. Okay.
We can have somebody from our team probably reach out or chat with you about using Arborist to hopefully fix to fix any kind of bottlenecks that you're experiencing, because we should already have that information in an Arborist node. As far as I know, somebody on the call can correct me if I'm wrong, if it's not living in the node itself, like the document information for the dist, because the npm signature lives inside the dist right now, and the proposal is to keep it there or in some place. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Any other comments or notes on that one specifically? I think it's something that we could probably ratify between now and the next time we chat, so that we just know that we're all good, and in the future we can open up a new proposal to add it to install potentially if there's no major, huge performance bottlenecks for it. It would have to go in a major version of the CLI, and then we would probably introduce a new flag similar to like we have with npm fund or audits, etc., like where you can opt out of the signature verification by default.
I mean, when we ship this, we can ship a flag that has that, and then just like we were discussing earlier, flip that bit from false
what
to
I was
true.
implying.
Sure. So it's just always interesting because we've got so many config. We want to be mindful how we just continually grow them, but I want to keep track of all of them. So if we add something like include signature verification for install.
Well, and there's another RFC that could allow it to just be added scoped under install. So
I wish there was infinite time, but yes, the RFC I believe you're talking about is command specific config.
Yeah,
so,
yes. I mean that seems like it drastically reduces the problem of command explosion, of config explosion, because like there's a bunch of things that could be added to one command that then everyone else doesn't have to suffer through.
Yes. Yep.
I appreciate y'all.
Yeah. Cool. We will get to that next week. Then for sure, I'll make sure that's a top priority because we do want to get that queued up for V9, essentially. Like if we can support command specific config, it saves a lot of folks a lot of headaches, and I think really does modularize things a lot. So thank you everybody for jumping on today. Apologize if I didn't get to everything that you were hoping to talk about. We'll definitely try to get some more items next week, and I'll see you next week. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.